Hello and welcome to CB Talk, the Combined Transport Blackwell monthly podcast. Today is September 26th, 2025, and I'm your host, Nick Card, Vice President of Operations. Today we've got a great interview. In fact, our first interview with two guests. Jeanne and Jason are going to be on the program to talk about FMCSA, CSA scores, and some strategies to manage yours. But first, the news. Our drivers and employee of the month this month, Israel Martinez in Glass and Flatbed, our team, Gary and Patricia in Blackwell, and Sean Baker in Heavy Haul. Congratulations, you guys. Thanks so much. In the office this month, it's Kayla Brooks. Congratulations again, and thank you for all that you do for the company. Our safety topic of the month is personal conveyance use. We're actually going to get into this a little bit more in the interview, but personal conveyance and using it improperly is one of our biggest sources of CSA points. So it's not hard to use personal conveyance. It's a really good tool, but you want to make sure that you understand the company policies, the FMCSA guidelines, and the correct scenarios for using it so you can make sure that you use it in a compliant and accurate way. In the news this month, Washington's DOT launches their truck parking information management system to give drivers real-time and predictive updates on parking availability along Interstate 5. So this is going to cover 9 sites in the initial rollout in Gee Creek, Maytown, Fort Lewis, SeaTac, Smoky Point, and Custer rest areas and way stations. We'll get 2 more by the end of the month and additional locations through 2026. This will include some predictive technology to help drivers plan up to 4 hours in advance, hopefully reducing stress, improving safety, and maximizing the use of existing parking spaces. That's going to be a really big benefit if you're having to spend the night up in that part of the West. And with that, it's time for the interview. Joining me in the studio today, this is a very special interview as our first time with 2 guests on the program. I have Jeanne, who is our licensing and compliance manager. Jeanne's been with Combined for 7 years. And an old guest, Jason, our Vice President of Driver Relations and Safety, is joining us back on the program. We have Jason and Jeanne here. We want to talk about FMCSA, we want to talk about scores and compliance. And so, Jeanne, I think we'll start off with this one because I think this is a really good question to sort of get the ball rolling. What were, from your perspective, are the biggest misconceptions that drivers have about the FMCSA scores?
I think one of the biggest things that I get questions about is when I go to a driver and I ask them, why didn't you send in your inspection? I have a record that we received one for you. And they'll say, but I was told it was just a warning. And essentially, it is a warning. You have a violation. And if it were anything other than a warning, you'd be issued a citation, which has a monetary value assigned to it. So this violation is now a warning to you, even though you're getting points. It's just a warning before we give you a citation.
So even though it's just a warning, it's a warning that I'm not charging you money. It's not a warning I'm not giving you points.
Exactly. You're still getting points anytime there's a violation listed on an inspection. And I shouldn't say anytime. Generally, because there's always exceptions. Generally, if there's a violation listed on that inspection report, there are points assigned.
So I think actually, now that we're talking about points, maybe I put the cart before the horse here because the CSA points, I know there's a lot of confusion. What do they do? Why do they matter to a driver? Can we take a step back and talk about what these points are and why we should care about them?
These points are, for lack of better terminology, safety points. They're assigning a point value to a violation. So if you have a flat tire, there's a certain amount of points for that. And if you have a blown hose for your air brakes, there's a certain amount for that. The point system is based on safety and how badly it would affect another passenger vehicle or cause damage. So that's how they base the points off. And also, there is also a time limit on these points. So when it first happens, there's a time limit and it decreases with time.
So, Jason, I think I want to turn the conversation over to you because I know you look at some of these points when you hire drivers. So clearly these points are not just like I'm on a piece of paper and a citation and you're done. Like these are things that are problems that follow a driver's career and impact their ability to get a job, right?
Yeah, for the most part. But unfortunately, we're not allowed to see their points until we actually hire them. So what we can see is we get a report called the PSP report, and the PSP report lists inspections for the last 3 years that the driver received, and we can see the violations that they received, and we can estimate what the points would be based on that report. But again, we can't actually see their points until they're an employee of ours. But once they are an employee of ours and they receive points, we can use that as a tool to better our fleet, coach our drivers, teach them the do's and don'ts on anything involving FMCSA.
Because these points, right, span a whole bunch of different categories. Like some of it's maintenance, some of it's like licensing. What are the sort of the main violation areas, or are there categories, or how does that get sorted?
Yeah, so the categories for CSA are hours of service, crash indicator, vehicle maintenance, driver fitness, unsafe driving, drug and alcohol, and hazmat. And so a few of the categories, for example, hazmat and drug and alcohol, we have zero inspections done or zero violations in those categories. So we don't even have those in range. But some of the ones that seem to affect us more than others is specifically hours of service.
So when you say us, do you mean those points, when you say us, our drivers, or do those also come back on the company?
It comes back on the company too. So anytime a driver receives points, it stays with them for 3 years, but we get those points too. And sometimes we get points that they don't get in some categories, which I can explain later. But when we get those points, they stay with us for 2 years, even if the driver doesn't.
Okay. So are these points that impact our customers? I mean, does that impact our relationship with our customers? Is this like an insurance thing? How do these points sort of hit us in the real world?
Yeah, so it can hit us in a few different ways. One, it can set us up for audits. Mm-hmm. But another thing that I have seen recently is customers that are requesting these, and these are public too, so they can look themselves, but they have been requesting what our scores are on our categories, and if we're above thresholds, that can prevent us from getting freight from our customers.
CSA basically is in regard to the carrier safety scores.
Okay.
So when customers are getting smarter and when they want to introduce a new customer, when customers want to introduce a new carrier, they're aware now of the FMCSA, and they can just pop in, put the DOT number in, and there's the score, and they can see if they really actually want to do business with these carriers. And we are seeing this more and more. And it's just so that the customers are getting the better bang for their buck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have an incentive. They want to make sure that
Exactly.
their cargo gets to where it's supposed to go in one piece and is handled safely. Mm-hmm. So I guess circling back to the drivers, what are some of the best tips that you guys could offer on minimizing a driver's CSA score, how to avoid those violations or warnings and make sure that they keep a clean record?
Right at this point, I feel that the DOT is hyper-focused on hours of service as well as vehicle maintenance. So going in to a port, you need to make sure your brakes and your tires are in good condition. And it's not like they have jump scales everywhere. These guys know where the ports are. They know what's going to happen. They've hit them, like Blackwell is hitting them, at least 2 to 3 times a week. Before you get to a point that you're going to get pulled in, stop and check your vehicle. Make sure your tires are in good shape. Make sure your brakes are done. At night, make sure you sign your logs. Make sure that you're putting in the documents correctly. You need to have your bill of lading numbers in there. You need to have your truck, trailer. Make sure it's complete. Do your DVIRs. make sure that you're in a position of where nothing can be questioned.
Some of these issues sound like paperwork problems. I mean,
They are.
No.
Yeah, and I mean it is. They want to make sure that you are doing what you need to be doing. You're legally pulling the loads. You're not doing anything illegal. And that's part of it. Get your paperwork correct and get it entered into your ELD correctly.
So I mean, it's like it's just a paperwork error. I mean, how bad of a violation could that be?
You get enough of them, and it adds up. And the DOT officers are being trained to look for these things.
So they're specifically out there being trained to look for these paperwork things,
especially along your thoroughfares, your I-5 corridor. They have lots of advertisements about trafficking. They're checking for illegal loads. They're checking for trafficking, and they want to make sure that the paperwork, matches what you have in your ELD.
Mm-hmm. So you've got to stay up on all that ELD stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some other things that drivers should be keeping an eye out for when it comes to trying to control their violations or reduce those?
I put this into my introduction when I meet a driver is a lot of times these DOT officers have had a long day, and kill them with kindness, because when you've experienced one after the other of people getting upset with you because you're issuing violations, it only takes one person to say, "How are you? How are you doing?" Kill them with kindness.
That's good advice. So you'd said that the scale houses, these ports of entry and stuff, those are the primary places that we're getting these violations. I mean, those are not moving, right? I mean, those are fixed on a map, so
they're there. They're permanent. They're not going away. The most activity I see is in California, and it's the same ports pulling in every day. Mm-hmm. I see the Cottonwood, Mount Shasta. Those are the ones that we're getting a lot of, and it's probably because we're based right here. But they know our vehicle. They they see the drivers every single day, and they get pulled in a lot. Mm-hmm. So make sure you're prepared.
Yeah. Boy Scout sort of
Yes,
approach.
yep.
So, one of the things I know we've talked about on this show quite a bit is the importance of the pre-trip, the post-trip inspections, checking on your vehicle. And I know I hear from drivers that always say, well, we got to get going. I've got things to do. But those not only turn into like maintenance issues that down a driver, but now you're saying these can turn into these violations that stick with a driver's record for how long did you say it can stick on the
drivers
record?
It's 3 years, and ours is 2 years.
Wow. So it really does impact the drivers.
Yes,
directly.
it does.
So one of the big pushes from compliance this month too is we've been auditing heavily pre-trip and post-trip DVIRs, and we've been reaching out to the drivers, making sure we're reminding them that company policy states that they must do a pre-trip and post-trip. And so, reminding these guys, and I would say the majority of our fleet does do this, but we're reminding the guys that aren't doing it that how important it is, and things like this is what can prevent getting those vehicle maintenance points.
Mm-hmm. And most are receptive to it because they realize it is their job. We just give a small reminder saying it's part of trucking. Check your equipment. Essentially, when you get behind that wheel, that equipment is your responsibility. Just take preventative measures to make sure that it's your money too. If you're shut down, you're losing money as well. We need to make sure that we keep our equipment in top shape, and that we're all making money.
Yeah. I see you gave me a list of our top 3 violations, and I noticed the number 1 violation that you reported was false report in duty status. What is that? Can you walk us through what that is?
Primarily, that would be personal conveyance is what is generating that. And a lot of people, personal conveyance, as the laws are written, are very gray. and up to interpretation a lot of times in the officer that's pulling us in. We have to make sure that when our driver is using personal conveyance, it's not benefiting in a monetary way, either to him or to the company. And that's something that we've been discussing with drivers, is how to use personal conveyance correctly and legally. And most of these violations are due to just not understanding the laws.
And so it could be even if a driver's using it legally, but they're not talking about it legally.
Yes.
And so therefore they talk themselves into a violation.
Yes, a lot of it is how you notate it. You can't say, I'm going back to the yard. Well, you're returning from where you can use personal conveyance to go, whether it be shopping, that sort of thing. So the first leg of that has to be notated correctly, and then you can say, no, returning from shopping. It's all about the way you notate it.
If drivers had questions about personal conveyance, I mean, who should they reach out to?
They can either call myself or supervision, John, Rich, Ty, and we can all go over it with them to make sure that it's done correctly and that there's no questions.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned that, a lot of this is up to interpretation.
Yes.
And so obviously we probably reach some point where interpretation is probably not quite correct. I mean, is there a way to challenge these?
Yes, there is. If I have the correct information, I always tell guys, you have the right to document. You have the right to video. You have the right to take pictures of the violation. So if you feel that you are not being correctly instructed by a TOT officer, document, because that's my power. That's how I'm going to fix the situation. If I have nothing other than your word against the officer, I'm kind of out of luck, because when I challenge this, it goes directly to the officer. I have to have irrefutable proof that we're right and he was wrong to be able to move forward, to have them reconsider the judgment.
So me just saying I'm not in violation, that's not going to cut it.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, and I probably believe you, but it's not going to work. So I have to have proof, and what I tell everybody is make sure you document. And they can't refuse it. Legally, you have the right to document and challenge. Okay.
If drivers were to have some kind of a concern at a scale house or while they're going through inspections, how should they handle that kind of
Calmly.
situation?
Stay calm.
Okay.
And it's hard to stay calm in those situations, but they need to stay calm and they need to document. And that's their best weapon in that situation, because you've got so many people upset at one situation. It tends to get out of hand. And just make sure you're the calm one in the situation.
Do we ever win those challenges?
Yes.
Oh.
I have one. There was a situation where the officer cited us for hemp cigarettes in the truck, and it was quite some time ago. And I had to go back and find legal documentation when the percentage of hemp in a cigarette was made legal in 2018. I overwhelmed them with documentation, and I did win. But we win on a lot of crashes when we provide them proof that we were not at fault. Unfortunately, it doesn't back out the points, but it does put us in a better situation later for safety points.
Gotcha. So if you're frustrated with the situation or something happens, don't give up. There's really a chance that we can win this.
I can try. If you provide me with the information I need to move forward, then I will move forward, and we have a hope. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, I suppose this question kind of is more in your house from a safety perspective. I mean, obviously there's the scores and compliance and stuff, and obviously Jeannie's talking about some of these scores that are more paperwork than real safety. But I mean, yeah, we got to follow the rules, we got to be compliant. But some of these are real safety violations. I mean, we don't want flat tires, we don't want non-operational brakes. So what are we doing? Like, what are our safety programs as far as addressing and trying to bring some of these points down to help our drivers?
So we do a number of things when these situations arise. One of the biggest things that we do is we use a program called Infinity. It is a online video program. So we pick different topics every month. I believe the topic this month was CSA.
I believe so. Yeah.
And so we send out a video that talks about CSA and explains what it's all about. They have to take like a 5 to 10 question test and then send us back the answers, and they have to get 75% correct or more. So that's one way we're training our drivers on these things. Other ways, when compliance does their audits and do find that they've failed an inspection, they will pass that over to supervision. Supervision will reach out to the drivers and coach them on what they did and what they should have done for the future. So those are some of the things that we're working on with our drivers to get our scores down.
You know, after talking with Jeannie and looking at the information you guys provided, it looks clear that like personal conveyance is a big issue in terms of our violations. Is there any plan to reduce personal conveyance for the fleet?
It's something we've talked about, but at this time we don't have a plan to reduce it.
We're just trying to get guys to be compliant with the rules.
If they could just be compliant, we'd be fine.
And I do audit the personal conveyance, and we do talk to the drivers that we feel need to have some coaching. So we are monitoring it to make sure that it's being done correctly.
Well, I know we have some drivers that use it correctly, and
Yes.
it's a lifesaver for them because
Yes.
it really gives them a lot of flexibility with using the truck in ways that the really strict hours of service laws don't allow. But obviously, if it's the biggest violation problem we've got for hours of service, some balance has to be there. So.
Yeah. And we actually really haven't had many since we're auditing it. So
because this represents the 2 years
yes,
of history. Oh,
yes,
okay.
we are getting better between supervision and myself. We're auditing it. We're talking to the drivers, and we're communicating what they need to do to get the score
so
down.
if you're a potential personal conveyance violator, you probably know because either
Yeah.
they talk to you or,
Yeah.
or one
Yes.
of the supervisors. Okay.
We're pretty vocal about it.
I mean, for example, we haven't had an hour of service violation for combined since June.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're definitely trending in the right direction. However, the ones that we received in the past were significant, so they're going to stick
And so
around for a little
they
bit.
stick around for a while. Okay. Yeah. So from a safety perspective, what are your sort of top concerns that dovetail into these CSA scores?
Well, one of the biggest things I have concerns about is, no one ever wants to be audited, right? So those are the things that I have in the back of my mind when I'm looking at these scores. I look at the scores, they come out every month. I look at our trends, I look at what we're doing good and what we need to work on. And honestly, in a lot of categories, we are trending in the right direction. So I am feeling pretty confident that our scores, even by the end of this year, are going to look a lot better. We may even be under the threshold in one of them, one of the ones that we're over. From a safety aspect, I'm always looking at crash. Now, crash, you get points whether we're at fault or not. But it is a good tool to show involvement, to see, what we could have done differently in those situations.
No. So you mentioned crash. That's really interesting. You get scores even if we're not at fault? That seems kind of broken.
Yeah, so the more and more I read about that, it's really designed to just show involvement, to show patterns, see which carriers are involved in more accidents than others, regardless of fault. Crash indicator it's not meant to really punish anybody per se because it is a private category. Only the carrier and the DOT have access to it. It's not public like the other categories are. However, if you're over the threshold, you are still up for audit. So I do feel like in a way it can be punishing.
Interesting. So I mean, I think that'd be unfair because if you're a carrier that like runs in LA or New York all the time, I mean, you're around four-wheelers all the time, you'd think you would inevitably be involved in more accidents versus the guy that runs across the middle of, West Texas, like who's out there to get into an accident with him.
I did many years ago, and when I say many, it was probably about 5 years ago. I called one of the DOT officers down at our Ashland scale just to see if I could get a bit more information. And he said the thought process behind that was if you weren't in the area, that collision may not have happened. That's why they make sure that they keep record of it, and you still get points. And I said that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. The accident in question at that point was a gentleman in the LA area was stopped in traffic and a car ran into the back of his trailer. And they said that those points were assigned because if he hadn't been there, it may not have happened. And I said, we're not fortune tellers. He said, but that's part of the how the law was written.
Interesting. Yeah, for the crime of delivering freight around this country, stocking our stores, and
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for other people hitting us.
Exactly.
That's such a weird system.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and a lot of these laws and regulations are written by people that have never been in a truck
that's
before.
true for sure.
So the thought process may not be logical to us, but for them, apparently it is logical.
You being around compliance all day, you have much more empathy for that sort of thing. than
Yeah.
I think I do.
I don't really understand it, but I just have to deal with it.
So I think, just to hit on a couple things before we get done. I mean, is there anything we didn't talk about related to compliance or safety that we want to touch on today?
At this point, I would say no, that we have some major topics we could talk about. We don't have enough time for it. So, but I think it's a really good introduction to the FMCSA and the CSA points. And I'd be more than willing, if people wanted to discuss more, just to have them give me a call and to go into depth with them. It's kind of a boring subject, but it's something that makes sense to me, so I'd be more than happy to talk to them.
It's part of the world of being a trucker, so you
Yep.
gotta deal with the regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, I think we covered a lot of it. Looking here at my notes, I did want to point out something interesting, though. So you really got to look at the categories as a whole, in my opinion. Yes, we are over the threshold on hours of service. We do have a high number on crash because we have involvement, not necessarily fault. But when you look at our unsafe driving, it is incredibly low. So that, to me, speaks volumes of how safe we are as a carrier. And I really hope people see that and really understand that we do a really good job here.
Well, to point out, when I took over for Cord, what was it, 7 years ago, we had an unbelievably high score in vehicle maintenance. And it was kind of scary. But now it's in a manageable area. It can be fixed. We just have to band together and have a plan in place, and we can fix it.
I've always said that the easier something is to enforce, the more it will be enforced, not necessarily because it's actually about safety or anything else. And I hear you talk about these sort of form and manner, paperwork style violations. It's a lot easier to catch guys on that because you can literally look at their log
Exactly.
and check, and there we go. So, I guess it speaks to the fact that our drivers are prioritizing some of the important stuff. As you said, Jason, our unsafe driving is very low. But unfortunately, that is a different category than hours of service. And so we still have to prioritize that as well.
Well, and a point I would like to make, Jason was discussing how we contacted the drivers on the DVIRs. Before we did it, we had 200 to 300 a day not a day, 200 to 300 a weekend of violations where people didn't do their DVIRs. When we contacted them, Jason sent out his message. The next day, it was cut to 100. The next day, it was cut to 50. Now we're right at like 30, 35, somewhere in there. So these guys are doing their best job to get to work with us, and we really appreciate it. So we can do this if we just all concentrate on it.
Well, good. As you guys may know, I like to finish our conversation with something a little bit more personal about our guests. And Jason, I hear that you had some pretty successful fishing not too long ago.
Yeah.
A big salmon, is that the biggest in the boat, right?
It was the
5
biggest in the
feet
boat.
long, 50 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, Clark, probably. Yeah, well, let's go with that.
Is that a
Let's go
fishing
with that.
story?
It's a fishing story.
Fishing story.
50
Though
pounds.
you are quite the chef. I know I did get to have some of the smoked salmon that came from that, and it was quite good.
Thank you.
So, any more fishing in your future?
I hope so.
Oh, okay.
I hope so. I don't have anything planned right now, but you never know.
And that's one of the beautiful things about the Rogue Rivers. You can basically catch salmon 12 months out of the year, and
Exactly.
so yeah, absolutely more fishing in the future. And Jeannie, I hear that you are quite the artist, woodworking, and also a baker.
I do. So the woodworking actually came from my father, who passed away 20 years ago. The majority of the furniture in my house was made by him.
Oh, wow.
So, and my mother is very artistic as well, and as I get older, I need something to combat the ADD. So I started doing woodworking. I have lots of tools, many more than my husband, and I do woodworking, and I paint, and I draw, and I also bake a lot, but I'm on a diet, so I stopped baking.
That's a sad but understandable consequence.
I do bring things into the office, though. So
I don't feel like I've gotten very much of your baking, so we might have to change that.
I'll have to bake some more.
There we go. And you have your son, 10 years old,
Yes.
quite the footballer, I
Yes.
understand.
He's going to buy Mama a house someday.
Oh, is that so?
When he's in the NFL, he already told me.
There we go.
Yep.
I love it. Well, you guys, thank you so much for joining us today on the program. Thanks for being our first double guest. Hopefully
Thank you.
it was good for you guys, and
Yes.
appreciate the sharing of the information. This is a lot of good stuff about CSA.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for having us on.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Jeannie and Jason. Appreciate having you guys on. We learned a lot of really good things about CSA. Thanks for sharing that information. Our next episode will feature Scott Wagner and Jake Wells to talk about the current changes that are going on in our heavy haul division and the new structure that drivers should be seeing here coming up. It'll be out on October 24th. If you have any questions, please send them to us via Facebook or email them to us at cbtalk@combinedtransport.com. We appreciate your participation. It's your engagement that makes this podcast work. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of the Combined Transport team.